slides are just, you already have this, but these are nice slides to review it. This is the dorsal column medial lemniscal pathway. You can see the dorsal column is piling in here, and then as you get up to the medulla, they synapse on the second order neurons in the Gracile and cuneate nucleus, cross the midline, and ascend as the medial lemniscus. And the medial lemniscus in the medulla is oriented anterior-posterior. When you get up to the pons, it rotates so it's more medial and lateral. And you see that there's the north-south, east-west orientation. Those second-order neurons are headed to the VPL nucleus of the thalamus, and from there on over to the area 312, the postcentral gyrus. The thing that this slide gives you is that there is spatial orientation as you go up the different spinal cord levels that corresponds with the homunculus. So the lower, your lower extremities are going to wind up, if you follow them up here, they're going to wind up in the midline, in the sensory cortex. And they maintain that spatial orientation as you go through the brainstem. You don't need to remember the orientation, but through the brainstem, but that's how it's organized. The same thing holds true for the spinothalamic tract, which is illustrated here. Information comes into the spinal cord, synapses, and crosses the ventral white commissure, ascend in the spinothalamic tract all the way up to the VPL, and from the VPL again to the area 312. The corticospinal tract, so it leaves the cortex, it leaves the precentral gyrus, area 4. That's the primary motor strip mentioned yesterday. These fibers come down into the brainstem. They come down here through the cerebral peduncles. Look how massive they are. Right there. There are 400 billion axons in each. I just made that number up. There are a bunch of them. There are a bunch of them. But wait a minute. Here's the pyramid here. What happened to them? There they were, here they are. Where did they go? They're in there. Most of the descending motor outflow from the cortex synapses in pontine nuclei. That's what makes that big bulbous thing, pontine nuclei. Where do you think they go from there? I think Michaela said it. There, they go out through there to the cerebellum. What's left enters the spinal cord. As the corticospinal tract, or the pyramids here. So here's a little, just a summary here. All right, so if I want to pick up that thermos with my right arm, the information is going to originate in my left cortex, right? Correct? So all that information comes down to the left cerebral peduncle. It crosses into pyramidal decussation to this side to go to cervical alpha motor neurons, right? But I told you yesterday, if I have an intention tremor, what's the problem? Where is the lesion in an intention tremor? There's a resting tremor and an intention tremor. The resting tremor is basal ganglia, Parkinson's disease. An intention tremor is what? Somebody go to yesterday's PowerPoint. Intention tremor, movement. Think of it, movement. What controls movement? The what? Cerebellum. Intention tremor is the cerebellum. So all that descending input is going to go to the cerebellum. The cerebellum somehow sends it back out to modulate that movement. Now we'll go over how it does that next week. But that's the scheme. So if I'm going to move my arm, I've got this big outflow. Most of it's going to go to the cerebellum. The cerebellum is going to do something with it to modulate it so that what eventually gets through is refined and smooth.
Does that have anything to do with the upper motor neurons being modulating it?
Not really, because the cerebellum just modulates it. It doesn't control it. Control is from the cerebral cortex. That's the upper motor neuron. And an upper motor neuron lesion, you wind up with paralysis, like stroke. You wind up with paralysis. There is no outflow. If you lesion the cerebellum, you wind up with an intention tremor. The cerebellum does not initiate movement. It's the cerebral cortex. All right, so in cross-section through the inferior pons shows you cranial nerve 6 and 7. 6 and 7. 6, if you go back to the illustration of the ventral brainstem, this comes right out the midline. There's 6. Right there. The abducens nerve just comes right out near the midline. If you go back to the, one of these early illustrations right here, there's 6 right there. Okay? It's just coming right out the midline. Right off the midline, I should say. 7 has 5 functions, just like 9 and 10, because it's a parasympathetic nerve. 7, 9, and 10. Remember, they're the parasympathetic nerve. What do you think the nuclei of 7 are? Well, we know there's a superior salivatory nucleus that controls the submandibular, sublingual, and lacrimal glands. Superior salivatory nucleus. 7 also has sensation around the ear. So it's got nucleus and tract of 5. 7 also has taste to the anterior 2/3 of the tongue and visceral afferents, because you've got glands. Wherever you got visceral efferents, you've got visceral afferents. So it's using the solitary nucleus. In the motor nucleus of 7, going to the branchiomeric. What are the branchiomeric muscles of 7? 5 are muscles of mastication.
Facial expression?
The what? Caleb, you said what?
Exactly.
Now, what are the
expression.
the what?
Facial expression.
Facial expression. Coming from the motor nucleus of 7, here's something really strange, though. There's the nucleus. Instead of coming straight out, they go medial and then back towards the back, and then come out that way. They wrap around the 6 nucleus. If you look at the back of the 4th ventricle, there's the 4th ventricle right there. There's a bump. That bump is called the facial colliculus. It's caused by 7 nerves wrapping around 6. It's stupid, but that's the way it is. Okay? Here's the, those black things right there represent the pontine nuclei. If we look at this slide right here, here's the cerebellum, there's the 4th ventricle, this is the pons, this whole thing is the pons, that is the pontine nuclei, called the basal pons. That's what forms that big bump. All these huge nuclear groups in here are receiving that motor input and sending it out through here into the cerebellum. Kind of cool, huh? It's huge.
What are the pontine nuclei exactly? The little dots, or the whole thing is a nuclei?
So if you look at this thing here, the pinkish stuff, those are ribbons of axons heading out the middle cerebellar peduncle, also called the brachium and pontus.
Okay.
These things are headed back into there. These dark globs are the nuclei,
Okay.
and there are a bunch of them. That's what forms the big bulbous thing. How many nuclei are there? Okay. What gets through is going to be the corticospinal tract. Now this illustration is awfully busy, but it just tells you regarding cranial nerve 7 what we already talked about. Okay. And there's 6, poor little 6 sitting up there. There's the MLF. Because we know the MLF would be there, medial longitudinal fasciculus, because we got to get all the way up to cranial nerves 3 and 4 with the vestibulo thing. The rest of these nuclei that are listed up there, don't worry about it. Unless you have a particular concern, if you want to know, oh, I really want to know what the superior olivary nucleus does, I'll tell you, but let's just move on. Here's an illustration of 7 again, showing the different nuclear groups that are responsible for it. The thing about 7, though, that's odd, in terms of this cortico-bulbar relationship, you know, up here drives your face, right? Area 3, 1, 2. If you go to the motor homunculus, remember you see the big face. But the wiring is a little different. I said that things were bilateral, like mastication, sticking out your tongue, swallowing, eating, swallowing, all that stuff, bilateral. What's not bilateral is part of 7. So here's the facial motor nucleus right there and right there. If we take the facial expression muscles from the corner of your eye down versus the frontalis muscle right here, the innervation is different. Follow me on this. Here's our frontalis muscle here. There's the frontalis innervation. Here's the innervation to the muscles below the eye. So remember the names of those 5 branches of the facial nerve? 2 Zanzibar bimotor tempora. So that's going up here. And then the lower 4 get down here, right? Look how they're innervated. Let's do it on this side. Right here, the lower muscles receive an innervation from only the other side. The frontalis muscle innervation comes from both sides. it's bilateral. So if I have the stroke up here, what's going to happen? If I tell you to raise your eyebrows, you can still do it because your frontalis will be supplied on the other side. But if I tell you to smile or frown or puff out your cheeks, you won't be able to do it because what's below the eye is only innervated on the other side. So if I have my face is drooping, if I come in, wake up in the morning and my face is drooping like this, the problem is over here. The question you ask is, raise your eyebrows. If you can raise your eyebrows, that's bad. Because the differential diagnosis includes Bell's palsy. Bell's palsy is a problem, is a lesion of the nucleus. Now you're talking the difference between upper motor neuron lesion and lower motor neuron lesion. The stroke, also called a CVA, cerebrovascular accident. The stroke is an upper motor neuron lesion. A lesion of the nucleus is a lower motor neuron lesion. That's essentially the same thing as an alpha motor neuron, right? Final common pathway. If you have a lesion of the nucleus, you're going to wipe out all upper and lower innervation. If you have Bell's palsy, you can't raise your eyebrow. If you're having a stroke, you can. All right? Also, if you see somebody with Bell's palsy, you see how Michaela, she's got her, what the hell is he saying going on here? And it's got the lines going across her forehead. See? In Bell's palsy, they stop in the midline because that's her frontalis muscle wrinkling her forehead. Or the Botox that they inject in here, that also does the same thing. When you see some 80-year-old woman with a perfectly smooth forehead, it's the Botox. Everybody understand Bell's palsy versus stroke. You can raise your eyebrows, it's stroke. If you can't, it's Bell's palsy. Here's 6, cranial nerve 6. 6 innervates one thing, that's the lateral rectus, it rotates the eyeball lateral. That's it, that's all it does. If you have a lesion of 6, what's going to happen to the eyeball? It's going to, because of the unopposed action, it's going to rotate medially, you're going to have cross eyes. Notice here that the innervation to the abducens nucleus is bilateral, which we know the extraocular eye movements muscles are not affected by stroke. Here's 5. 5 is wonderful. There's the trigeminal ganglion synapsing all in here. This is called the tract of 5 because these fibers, they come in and go down and they go up. And then that's the nucleus of 5. So you'll often hear me say that the trigeminal tracted nucleus, or tracted nucleus of 5, because they're together. That's the junction between the first order and the second order neurons. You know when we talked about, so here's a Jeopardy thing. When we talked about testing pain versus touch out here, and I said in the face, you only have to do 1. If you really want to get precise, you can do both. Because touch in the face is transmitted through the main sensory nucleus of 5. Touch is face. Touch is main sensory nucleus. that's in the pons. Pain and temperature of the trigeminal is in the descending part here, that's in the spinal part. So pain and temperature is down here, touch is here, and then proprioception, like your mandible, that's 5, right? The TMJ, mandible, the mastication, it's up here in the mesencephalon. In the mesencephalic nucleus of 5. So if you're just testing the peripheral nerve, you only have to do one test. But if you really want to get precise, if you have a medullary lesion, you're going to lose pain, temperature. If you have a pontine lesion, you're going to lose touch. If you have a mesencephalic lesion, you're going to lose proprioception. This is what it looks like. And here's another oddity. So here's the trigeminal ganglion. Second order neurons are going to cross the midline and go up. But you remember when I'm talking about sensation out here, what's the thalamic nuclei it goes to? All of that goes to touch and pain. The second order neuron is going to synapse to the thalamus on what nucleus? The VPL, ventral-posterior lateral. The trigeminal nucleus, the second order neurons synapse on the VPM nucleus, ventral-posterior medial nucleus of the thalamus. Here's one final oddity about the trigeminal nerve. The first order neurons are out here in the trigeminal ganglion, right? I've said that. Except proprioception. Proprioception, for some reason, it's a displaced nucleus. Instead of being out here where it's supposed to be, the cell bodies are actually in the mesencephalic nucleus of 5. You see them right here? So the first order neurons are inside the brainstem. No other place is that present in the rest of your body. Now they're going to synapse on second orders, and they're going to go on up to the VPM from there. Here's what it looks like. There's the VPM nucleus. There's the VPL. Here's some relays for 5 that are kind of interesting. All right, so once you get the synapse going on in the spinal tract nucleus of 5, that nucleus also projects to other places, not just the VPM. One of the places here, so sensation from V1 goes to the facial motor nucleus, bilaterally. Sensation from V1 is the cornea. Remember the blink reflex? If I touch your cornea, that's trigeminal pain. So that information goes up through the ophthalmic division, the cell bodies in the trigeminal ganglion, it goes into the descending part, will synapse there and go up to your brain. Ow, that hurts. But what did you do? You blinked. So there must be a connection from 5 to 7 to cause you to close your eyes. If V1 is cut, if I touch this cornea, I won't feel anything, right? But if I touch the other cornea, both eyes will blink. That's cool. In Bell's palsy, if I have Bell's palsy on the right, if I touch my right cornea, my right eye won't blink because it can't blink. The seventh closes my eye, right? But what will happen is the other side will blink. It's the goofiest thing in the world. You touch somebody with Bell's palsy on the cornea and the other side blinks. It's stupid looking. They want to blink this side, they just can't. The second bullet point projects to the superior salivatory nucleus, the lacrimal nucleus. Why? Because if you get something in your eye, you start tearing. What drives tears? The lacrimal gland. What innervates the lacrimal gland? The seventh cranial nerve. What nucleus of the seventh cranial nerve? It's the superior salivatory nucleus. Projects to the superior inferior and salivatory nuclei for salivation. Why is that? If I take a piece of steak or a carrot, we'll say for the vegans in the room, if I take a carrot, a luscious carrot, and put it in my mouth and start eating it, the proprioceptive inflammation will cause salivation. There's a relay between 5 and 7 and 9. Also projects to 12, because when you put something in your mouth, you taste it, but you also feel it. Sensation inside the mouth, the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, the cheeks, is all 5. If you're eating, you have to know where your tongue is in space, or you'll eat your tongue. You have to keep it away from your chewing teeth. What drives your tongue to keep it away? 12. And finally, project to the vagal parasympathetic. This is why I will not eat, ever, chicken and dumplings. Because my grandmother, when she would make chicken and dumplings, she was never very good about getting the cartilage out. You know, when you know, the gristle, or whatever you call that stuff on a chicken. And so I would be eating chicken and dumplings, and the dumplings are nice and soft, and my mouth is sensing, my proprioceptors are sensing how much I bite, right? And it's, you know, you're going through the chicken meat and the dumplings, all about the same consistency, and you're a happy little boy, and all of a sudden you bite down on that piece of cartilage. It's not calcified, so it's not like a bone, it's dead. You bite down on it, but it doesn't give. And what do? Oh! That's my grandmother, is why I will never eat chicken and dumplings. It has to do with this reflex. The pressure in your mouth is connected to your vagus nerve, which causes vomiting. Okay? If ever there's a piece of gristle in a Little Debbie oatmeal cream pie, no more Little Debbie oatmeal cream pies. Any questions about this? A couple of tumors here. You can see the problem with these things is that they're inoperable. The other problem is that they're always pressing on vital things. They're never, ever, ever good. I think what we're talking about here is the mesencephalon. You see 3 and 4 right there. Mesencephalon. So once you get up to the mammillary bodies, you're out of the mesencephalon. On the back side, we've got the 4 colliculi. We've got the 4th nerve there. one of the big things about the mesencephalon is inside the mesencephalon. So the mesencephalon is just right there. There's the mammillary body. It's small. There's a cerebral aqueduct. We were talking yesterday about blockage of the ventricular system producing hydrocephalus. The easiest place to block it is right here in the mesencephalon, because the cerebral aqueduct is the narrowest point, and there's no way around it. You can block one, well, that's just it. Cerebral aqueduct, mesencephalon. Probably sounds like a test question, wouldn't you think? All right, if we do a cross-section through the mesencephalon, we've got the peduncles here, cerebral peduncles. Behind the peduncles are the substantia nigra. You see the substantia nigra. A bunch of nuclei tracks in here. And then here's the fourth nerve. The fourth nerve is also unusual in that it crosses before it leaves the brainstem. So all the rest of them, like the third nerve and the sixth nerve, they go straight out. But here they cross. So if you have a lesion here, it's going to affect the other superior oblique. Now, these things are not impacted in strokes, CVA, because remember, they're bilaterally innervated. But if you have a brainstem lesion that tags the nucleus, remember that it's the other side. So if a person comes in and they're having problems walking downstairs or reading, and you suspect fourth nerve, because that's what, down and in, it's the other side. Here's the third nerve, is right here. There's the MLF, it's right beside the MLF. MLF terminates in the third nerve, obviously. So there's the third nerve. The third nerve has two different functions. It has a parasympathetic function. We know that constricts the pupil. And it has the somatic function that runs the extraocular eye movement muscles and your upper eyelid. You don't need to memorize these muscles, these nuclear group here. Just know that there are two nuclei, roughly two nuclei. One's somatic, the other is parasympathetic. The parasympathetic one is my favorite nucleus because it's called the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. That's the parasympathetic nucleus of 3. Need to spend a little time on this illustration here, because this is the consensual and direct light reflex. So if I shine a light in this eye, that information travels down into the brainstem, where it will synapse on the Edinger-Westphal nuclei bilaterally. So if I shine a light in this eye, both pupils will constrict. If I lesion this optic nerve, and I'm blind in that eye, if I shine the light in there, nothing will happen, because you can't get the light back to there. But if I shine the light in this eye, the blind pupil will still constrict. Make sense? This slide shows you the substantia nigra. It's called black substance because of the catecholamines in it. They oxidize, turn black. And in fresh specimen, they appear like that. In Parkinson's disease, you lose the catecholamine-containing neurons, the dopamine-containing neuron, so you lose the substantia nigra. 85% of the substantia nigra needs to be gone before you start having symptoms of Parkinson's disease. This is hearing. So the cochlear nuclei here are here. And the only thing I want to say about hearing in terms of the brainstem is that if you look and you follow this up, it is enormously bilateral. By the time you get to this area here in the temporal lobe, that's called the transverse gyrus of Heschel, H-E-S-C-H-L. Transverse gyrus of Heschel, that's hearing. That's where hearing is in the cortex. It's so bilateral though, there is no stroke in the world, there's no lesion in the world that results in hearing loss. The only two places you can get hearing loss are the ossicles and the nerve. Once it gets in the brainstem, it's so bilateral, there's so many different levels, you can never take away the other. Interesting thing though about hearing is it's very tonotopic. If you look at the spiral cochlea here, high tones are perceived at the top, low tones at the bottom. As you go through here, when you get all the way up to the transverse gyrus of Heschel, high tones are located on one part of the gyrus, low tones on the next. Very tonotopic. The visual pathway starts in the retina. I don't know how much retinal histology or physiology you've ever had, but anyway, the rods and cones are down here. They synapse on ganglion cells that give rise to the optic nerve. The optic pathway. The primary projection of the optic nerve is the lateral geniculate nucleus of the thalamus. That's this thing right here, the beehive-looking thing. There's also a projection, though, down into the superior colliculi. Oh, I know why I had this slide here. That's showing the inferior colliculus right there is involved in a relay to hearing. I mentioned that earlier, and that's the illustration of it. The superior colliculus is involved in vision. And I kind of mentioned this yesterday, is that if I'm walking on the savannah and I see lunch, which is some little gazelle or something, flash out of the corner of my eye, I'm going to spin my head to track that animal. Or if I'm walking along here and all of a sudden Big Ron pulls out a Mac 10 and I hear him, or is that Mac 10 or Mac 9? What is it? For you gang members?
A Glock?
A Glock. He pulls out a Glock. And he ratchets that thing, he chambers around. And I'm like, oh no. So I do that. I turn my head. The superior colliculus is involved in a reflex to turn your head toward that area. I mentioned yesterday the tectospinal tract. The superior and inferior colliculi are called the tectum. The descending pathway from the superior colliculus into the cervical spinal cord that moves your head. Again, it stops at the bottom of the cervical cord because you don't move your hands in relation to vision. You move your head. The tectospinal tract is the reflex pathway from the superior colliculus into the cervical cord. If you move the head some other way, the collicular cells don't fire. It's only a reflex mechanism, and it's very specific. If you lesion the colliculus, though, an odd thing happens. Remember I was talking about that, drew that clock up here, and said people come in, they shave only half the side of the face? Hemineglect occurs when you lesion the colliculus. follow these pathways here, the input is that, you know, on up to the retina. The left superior colliculus and the left lateral geniculum see the right visual field. So it's going to be this temporal retina and that nasal retina, and vice versa. You just follow the little diagram and you can see that. And now you know as much as I know about, pretty much, the brainstem. Any questions? All right. You know, last year, we had, so next week, we're going to do the deep brain structures, and then we're going to do higher functions, like the cortex and cerebellum. So 2 more lectures. Last year, we did all 4 of them in 1 week. So you caught a break. Okay? Bye. I'll see you at 1.